Good day to the examiners, my test supervisor, and also my friends who watch this video. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Franinta Egia Sembiring, and today I'd like to present my research. The title of my research is Alteration of Racial Discrimination in Novel into Film The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. In conducting this research, because the objects that I use are novel and film, so I applied adaptation theory, and especially used Linda Hutchins' theory, which entitled Theory of Adaptation. For the method, due to my research which based on an intrinsic approach, I applied close reading method, which means that I only focus on the intrinsic elements. The element that I use is elements of fiction, such as character, plot, setting, point of view, and theme. These elements is really worthwhile in produce the pre-critical response of the works. And I have 3 research questions. The first one is how racial discrimination different between the novel and film. The second one, what medium specificity has shown overt by the film compared to the novel. And the last one, how the alteration of racial discrimination portrayal affects meaning. And the aims of my research is not only to elaborate the alteration between the novel and the film, or medium specificity and the moral message that affects by alteration, but also to declare that film cannot underestimate nowadays, because film is a product that has excellent value and also has a unique feature that the novel doesn't have. First, I'd like to define the term of adaptation. Adaptation is the process of transferring or altering the story from one medium to another medium. And Linda Hutchins also stated in her book that adaptation is a repetition without replication. So, it means that the adaptation work is not replicate, but it needs a creativity to create the repetition which has a unique specificity that the original version doesn't have. As for the findings, it can be said that novel and film are 2 different media that have their own characteristic or features. Novel using a narrative description to represent every situation and characters in our thought. Meanwhile, film changes it with an action or visual. There are 2 sections in between the Hate You Give novel version and the film adaptation, which are different from one another. They are the omission of the character and the modification of plot. These sections shows that in adaptation is nothing absolute. It's nothing absolute when processing to adapt from the novel into a film. For the omission character, the term of omission can be defined as a condition when a character are removed from the story due to something, either this character is not essential or this character doesn't fit with the director's new idea. The character who get omitted is the Fante. The Fante is the character who introduced in the first chapter of the novel. He is a teenager who lives in Garden Heights and ends up gets involved with a drug dealer's gang. And after I analyze the novel and the film, it can be said that the reasons why the Fante's character get omitted by the director in the film is because his character or his appearance doesn't make any significant change to the entire story, and his appearance always represent with commotion and altercation with which has an empty meaning. So that the director George Tillman replaced the Fante's character 27, who known as the main character's brother. It is also makes every plotline that the Fante have in the novel devolve to 7. The omission of the character that the directors did in the film is a useful action to make the audience easier in understanding the film adaptation. without omitting the main character or the core of the story. The second section is modification of the plot. So modification of the plot is a reasonable condition that often appears in adapting the story from textual work to visual work. Although the changes often different from the reader's imagination when they read the novel, but the modification aiming to create the story more dramatic, seems like a real situation, and also gets more the audience attention from the first scene. The modification can be seen on the beginning and the end of the story. In the beginning of the novel, it starts from Star Carter, or also known as the main character, that who kept thinking that she doesn't belong to come to the party which held in her neighborhood. The novel shows the main character's inconvenience when she has to be Stars who lives in Garden Heights or Star who study in white people's school. It is inversely proportional to the film adaptation, which starts with the cold opening. The film adaptation shows the flashback of Star's childhood when her father advises her and her brothers how to act in front of the police officer. Her father also reminds them to be proud of being black and have to help the other black people in their community. The director tried and revealed the racial discrimination to show the dramatic parts of the story. This scene is also emphasizes the situation of black community who often get discriminated by the society. In addition, to make the audience directly know the theme of the story. The modification that differentiates novel and film is the way of both works express the ending. The novel concludes the story with using an accidental accident, which makes the leader of drug dealer get arrested by the police officer after fired some stores in Garden Heights. The ending also denotes with Star and her family moving out of Garden Heights. Meanwhile, the film shows Star and her family still live in her neighborhood. Likewise, George Stillman creates a dramatic climax by using Sekani, or known as Star's little brother, who points a gun to the leader of drug dealer. The dramatic climax are modified to make the time duration of the film more shortened. Due to the different perspective in showing the story, George Stillman also aims to show the acronym of Thug Life, where stand for the hate you give, little infants, F everybody to the audience. The film states little infants as a meaning of the result of hate, which shows Sekani as a symbol of it. And as for the medium specificity, the changing of medium after being adapted really affect the main issue that the author wants to convey in the novel. It happens due to the different way of showing the story. In the film adaptation, the story must be shown more dramatic and attractive to get the audience attention. At this point, I have found that the film adaptation changes and also focuses on the plotline, setting, and the intention of the story. First, the film shows about how the black people have to act politely in front of the police. This first scene is really contrast with the first line in the novel. The director bolds the first scenes to show the audience about the intense issue that the story wants to reveal. In the film, it can be called as cold opening, where the firm impression in telling the story will show up first. The other specificity that the director wants to show is the intention. Tillman intends to show that racial discrimination has been embedded in black people's life since they were a child. This plotline cannot be found in the novel because the film has a short time to conclude every description that talks about racial discrimination in one scene. Then, the last specificity that I found in the film is the setting. The film adaptation showed the setting with using visual image. Thus, the audience can be more easier in understanding the story. And the film adaptation also represent the plays such as Garden Heights and Williams School with the real situation, so that the audience can feel that they are also experiencing every situation that black people had. And as for the moral message or meaning that get affected by the alteration, after doing this research, I found that the novel and the film have a different idea in expressing the message. The novel used the main character as a center of the plot story and also the one who brings out the moral message. From the main character, the author conveys that we have to be brave to speak about the truth and give our voice against any racial discrimination. This message notifies about the current situation in many countries that mostly has less tolerance. The novel also describes Star Carter or the main character's transformation from a coward to a brave girl. Meanwhile, the film adaptation using Sekani, or known as Star Carter's little brother, as the one who brings the message. The director show it in the end of the story. The film adaptation shows the intense ending with Sekani, a little boy who points a gun to a drug dealer's gang. In this sense, the director has an intention to reveal that Sekani is the result of hate, because he always feel and see how white people mistreat his family and how the environment behave unfairly to black community. The film adaptation is also wants to show the meaning of thug life itself, which stands for the hate you give little infants of everybody. So Sekani is the little infants that will turns out as a product of hatred. Based on my research, I conclude that first, every literary work that adapted into any medium will alter from the original version. And the second one, the modification in the film adaptation makes both works or novel and film have strength and also weakness. And I think that's all from me. Thank you.